Hi guys, in today's video we are going to be learning how to make this gown. Looking at the shoulder, you would notice that it has no shoulder join at this place and it has a very deep plunging neckline, perfectly finished. Now coming to the skirt part, you are going to notice that it has pleat that went up like this. This pleat was achieved using slash and spray. Coming to the down part, it has a front slit. Now if this is something you are interested in learning, kindly continue watching this video. Now this shoulder is actually called a drop shoulder. Looking at the sleeve, you notice it has no sleeve joint. Meanwhile, this is the dress I got the inspiration from. I took it from Pinterest and a so friend requested I made a video tutorial on it. Shout out to her. So here's the video. Kindly watch to the end so you will not miss out on any interesting part. For the neckline, I used a 3.5 inch wide and a 3.5 inch deep. Marked out my bust point, my under bust and the half length of this dress. Now this is my borderline. I try to make it big or small. Just make sure that it is straight and that all of your measurements start after your borderline. Now for the shoulder, 7.5, and I marked out exactly 7.5. For this first armhole depth, do not draw out your armhole depth yet. You can just make a twist line as you see me do. Then you mark out your armhole depth. For my bust span line, I simply divided my bust span measurement into 2. My bust span measurement is 7. Divided into 2 gave me 3.5, and I went ahead to add 0.5 to it, and I marked out 4 as my bust span line. Now I'm going to be marking my waist dart, and for the waist dart, you mark 0.5 to the front center, mark it to the under bust, you connect it straight up like this. Coming to the side here, you are going to mark 1.5 inches as the dart intake to the side. I'm going to mark this straight up like this. Now whatever you used as your dart intake for the waist, you are going to be using it as your dart intake for your shoulder. I'm going to measure my total dart intake at the waist point, which is 2 inches. Connect it to stop 0.5 inches before the bust point. So the next thing to do, I'm going to be inserting my body measurement. Divide your body measurement into 4, add back your dart intake and add back your necessary sewing allowance. For this, I'm using a 0.5 inch sewing allowance because I'm using a stretchy fabric. So I'm just going to connect these lines together like this. So I'm going to be closing our shoulder dart. You're going to agree with me that at the time we close our shoulder dart, it's going to reduce our shoulder measurement. So we are going to close the shoulder dart and redraw our shoulder measurement. Else, when you are done drafting and cutting, you are going to be having a shortage of your shoulder. To close the bust dart, all you have to do is to pinch up your bust span line like this. And you're going to ensure that it meets up with your dart leg like this, and you use your masking tape and you hold it down. So after holding it down, you're going to be getting a pattern that is not relaxed like this, but you're actually going to take note that it has added some fullness to our bust point. So if you take a look at the shoulder, you'll also notice that your shoulder line does not align. You're going to make the shoulder line align, and to do this, you're going to place your rule on this part of your shoulder line, ensuring it sits straight on this part like this. And you're going to draw it out straight up. So on this new line is where you're going to mark out your divided shoulder measurement. Mine is 7.5. It's wrong for you to place your rule like this and connect it. What you have to do is to go to your armhole depth here, and you're going to measure your shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 7.5, and you mark it at this point. So wherever the point is, you are going to connect this to this point like this. Now on this new line is where we are going to be drawing our armhole curve. There's a video on the channel already on how to curve the armhole. I'll drop the link in the description box below. To come down by the shoulder by 0.5, and I'll slant the shoulder. So you're going to be inserting the sleeve. Now I'm going to place my rule. Ensure that it sits on your shoulder slant and not your neckline point. You just extend it depending on your sleeve length. So I'm just going to connect this like this, and I'm going to connect my armhole depth as well straight up like this. From this point, I'm going to measure my desired sleeve length. So I'm going to be using 6 inches for the sleeve. Connect the 6 inches straight down like this. From this point, you are going to determine how wide you want the connected sleeve to be on your sleeve. I'm going to be using 3 inches for this. At this point now, you're going to determine the depth of your neckline. So you can decide to make your neck depth whatever you want. I can decide to use 5.5. I'm going to go to the half length. Kindly take note that the neck effect do not get all the way to the half length. So I'm going to go up the half length by 1.5 inches. Now to make this pattern really flat, I'll just open up the waist dart. That is to say, I have transferred the shoulder dart to the waist dart. So opening the waist dart to make your pattern flat and easy for you to work on. So I'll just connect from this point to my desired neck depth. I'm going to be connecting your connected shoulder point to your desired neck depth. Now this is not a straight line, so you just use your hands and make a curve and ensure that it meets with your desired neck depth. I'm going to secure my shoulder dart. Now just watch carefully how I'm going to cut this out.
Cut out the neckline, and then I'll go ahead to take out the borderline at the half length. Take out my curve. Please ensure that this is not pointed at any point. Then I'll take out my dart. You can decide to connect this to the top part or just take out the waist dart. I'll be showing you how you can work with just the waist dart without transferring it with the top. Cut out the sleeve. Please ensure that your round sleeve measurement is equal to your main round sleeve. So this is what the front pattern looks like. Let's just quickly go to the back.
So now this is the back part, and as you can see, I've drawn my basic line. This is my border line. Now this is my zipper allowance, and all my measurements started after my zipper allowance. I've gone ahead to mark out my shoulder measurement divided by 2 of this. Now I have slanted the shoulder by 1/2 inch, and I have curved out my armhole curve. Now for the armhole depth, my normal armhole depth is 7.5, but I marked out 8 just so that it would include my 0.5 inch shoulder slant. That is the same thing I did for the front. So on this half length point, I'm going to be taking out 1 inch for the dart intake, which means 0.5 to the side and 0.5 to the front center. So the dart is going to be stopping 1.5 inches before my bust point. So I'm going to connect this straight up like this.
Now I'm going to insert my body measurement, and while you insert your body measurement, ensure you start after the zipper allowance, and remember to add back your dart intake and your necessary sewing allowance. I'm going to go ahead to connect the points together like this. Just ensure that this connecting is not pointed at any point.
At the zipper point here, coming to the half length, I'm going to reduce it by 1/2 inch.
This is for the back tightening to avoid bulging of the zip, and I'm going to connect it like this.
To extend the shoulder line like we did for the front part, placing it on your shoulder slant like this.
Extend the line, measure the same sleeve length, and you go ahead to connect it to your armhole point like this. At this point, I'm going to measure my round sleeve measurement, and I'm going to connect it to my armhole point like this. Just ensure it is not pointed at this point. Whatever you use as the length for the shoulder and sleeve measurement, you use the same thing for the back part. I'll mark out my 3 inches here. I'll go ahead to mark out my neck depth. You can decide to make the back neckline deeper than this. So for me, I'm going to connect it for my desired neck depth to the center point on the bust point line like this. So we are going to be cutting this out. I'm going to take out the border lines for the both up and down. So I'll take out the back zipper tightening. So I'm going to place out my zipper allowance on fold like this before I go ahead to take out the neckline into the shoulder and sleeve slant like this. I'll take out the sleeve and the side shapings, and I'm going to take out the neckline curve with my zipper allowance still on fold. I'm going to be explaining what I'll be doing with the dart later on, and I will not be taking out my dart intake. And remember to indicate the up part on the sleeve, the down part, and the round sleeve on the sleeve. Do the same thing for the front piece as well.
I'm going to also be notching out the point where my sleeve meets with my fabric. I'm just going to put down a mark like this, and I'm going to be explaining to you while transferring to my fabric what I later did with that mark.
For the skirt part, I've gone ahead to place my pattern on fold, and I marked out my waistline, my hip line, my full length, and the necessary folding allowance at the down. So I'll go ahead to mark my waist measurement divided by 4, my dart intake, and my sewing allowance of 0.5 inch. I'll mark out my hip line and add my sewing allowance as well. For the full length, I'll mark out my waist measurement plus 1 inch, then I'll add my sewing allowance. I'll connect these points together, and I'm going to blend the hip as you see me. Do kindly take note that I do not add a zipper allowance to this. I'm going to be explaining to you when I'm drafting on my fabric. So I'm going to place the allowance on fold like this before I go ahead to cut it out.
Because I folded it up, it gave me the right shape that will fit into it when I'm really folding it up.
So next, I'm going to take this part and place it on my stretching material, and I'm going to cut out exactly what I have here, remembering to add your 1 inches for your zipper allowance at the front part. Now when you cut this on your stretching material, ensure that your hip part faces the part that stretches and the length part faces the part that does not stretch. While cutting this out on your fabric, you don't need to add any sewing allowance again because I've already added the sewing allowance while drafting on my paper. Remember to note where the hem allowance started from. So I've gone ahead to cut out the back piece first before I'll go ahead to temper with the pattern for my front part.
I'm going to be using this same pattern to cut out the front part. Involves slash and spray.
Now for the front part, I will not be needing my front waist dart because the tummy is really flat. So I'm going to be taking out the 1 inch I added for my waist dart. So I'm going to measure from the edge, then I'll take out the 1 inch, connect it to my hip part and blend the hip curve like this.
So I'm going to cut that out, and we are going to be using that line as our waistline to hip line measurement. So we are going to be drawing out the slash effect.
At the front center, you are going to get the midpoint of your hip line, add 1 inches to it, then you can go ahead to connect it to your hip line to get a slant like this. To get our slash lines, you are going to divide the front center by 4. Now I know that I use 5 pleats, but one thing is that whatever plate you want, just ensure you divide it one less than the actual plate you want. So I'll divide it by 4. I'm going to go ahead to mark it out. I'll go to the hip part and also divide it by 4, and I'll connect it together to get my slash lines. So I'm going to go ahead to cut through these lines. When you cut through, ensure that you do not cut it out entirely but leave a small piece at the hip line like this. I'm going to do this for all the lines. Now I'm going to cut through the center like this.
You can see how tiny this is at the edge, so that it will be easier for you to spray. And if you would not want to miss out on the sewing aspect of this video, kindly subscribe. Subscription is free. It is just to notify you when I upload something new on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys in my next video.